My hands trembled slightly as Daniel's BMW pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the Wellington estate. After 2 years of dating, I was finally meeting his parents. The mansion beyond the gates looked like something from a movie, all marble columns and perfectly manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people's salaries. "You okay, babe?" Daniel squeezed my hand, his Harvard class ring catching the afternoon light. "You look nervous." "Just want to make a good impression," I admitted, smoothing down my designer dress, a splurge I'd justified as an investment in this moment. "They'll love you," he said, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just, maybe don't mention the whole foster care thing right away. You know how traditional they are." The words stung, but I pushed the feeling down. He was probably right. No need to complicate things on the first meeting. The Wellingtons' butler, they had an actual butler, led us through hallways lined with oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors. The dining room was intimidating, with a table that could seat 20 and a chandelier that probably weighed as much as a small car. "Sarah, darling," Mrs. Wellington air-kissed me, her perfume overwhelming. She was exactly what I'd expected, platinum blonde, dripping in diamonds, with a smile that never warmed her eyes. "We've heard so much about you." Mr. Wellington barely looked up from his phone. "Pleasure," he muttered, already dismissing me. The first course arrived, some sort of deconstructed salad that looked more like art than food. Mrs. Wellington peppered me with questions, each one feeling like a test. "So, Sarah, where did you say your family was from? Daniel mentioned you work in business?" Her tone suggested she found the very idea quaint. "And where did you attend university? Daniel's Harvard friends are always asking about you." If you're enjoying this revenge story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more tales of justice and empowerment. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. The interrogation continued through the main course. I navigated each question carefully, but I could feel the walls closing in. Then it happened. "It's strange," Mrs. Wellington said, tilting her head. "I had my assistant do a little background check, standard procedure, you understand, and she couldn't find anything about your family. It's as if you appeared out of thin air." My stomach dropped. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me but said nothing. "I grew up in foster care," I said quietly, lifting my chin. "I don't have a traditional family background." The silence was deafening. Mrs. Wellington's face transformed, her mask of politeness crumbling into naked disgust. She stood abruptly, reaching for her wine glass. "Foster care?" She spat the words like they tasted bitter. "You mean to tell me my son has been dating some orphan? Some nobody who probably—" The rest of her words were lost as she threw the entire glass of red wine in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap, soaking my hair, my dress, dripping down onto the pristine white tablecloth. I sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. "That's to disinfect a poor girl," Mrs. Wellington sneered. "If you want to marry my son, you'll pay us $300,000. Consider it compensation for polluting our bloodline." I waited for Daniel to say something, to defend me, to stand up to his mother. Instead, I heard something that shattered my heart into a million pieces. Laughter. Daniel was laughing. Not uncomfortable laughter, not shocked laughter, but genuine amusement, as if his mother had just told the funniest joke in the world. I stood slowly, wine still dripping from my hair. Something cold and hard crystallized inside me. I smiled, a real smile, which seemed to unnerve them more than tears would have. "I see," I said calmly. "In that case, I'll be canceling all business between my company and Wellington Corp., effective immediately." The laughter died. As I walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the marble, I heard Mr. Wellington's urgent whisper cut through the silence. "Daniel, you fool, our company will collapse without Chen Industries." The elevator to my penthouse felt like it took forever. Wine still dripped from my hair, staining my dress beyond saving. My hand shook as I pressed the button for the top floor. How had I been so blind? "Sarah! Oh my God, what happened?" Maya, my assistant, jumped up from the couch as I walked in. She'd been waiting for me, laptop open, papers spread across my coffee table. "The Wellingtons happened," I said, heading straight for the bathroom. "Cancel everything with them. Every contract, every meeting, everything." "Sarah, wait." Maya followed me, her voice urgent. "You need to see these numbers first. The Wellington contracts are worth 40% of our business. 40%. The board will go crazy if you cancel them." I stopped in the doorway, turning to face her. Sweet Maya, fresh out of college, who didn't know the whole truth about me. "Maya," I said quietly, "I built Chen Industries from nothing. I can handle the board." Her eyes widened. She'd always assumed I'd inherited the company, like most CEOs our age. But the truth was different. So different. I closed the bathroom door and stared at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the scared foster kid anymore. I thought about those early days, aging out of the system at 18 with just a garbage bag of clothes and nowhere to go, working 3 jobs while taking community college classes, sleeping in a storage unit because I couldn't afford rent. My first break came when I noticed a flaw in a company's supply chain while working as a night janitor. I'd proposed a fix, saved them millions, and used the reward money to start my own consulting firm. Chen Industries grew from that one idea. And Daniel? I'd met him at a charity event 2 years ago. He'd been charming, funny, different from the usual rich boys. I'd never told him about my money. I'd wanted someone to love me for me, not my bank account. What a joke that turned out to be. After showering and changing, I found Maya had ordered Chinese food, my comfort meal. She knew me well. "There's something else," Maya said carefully, sliding her laptop toward me. "I was reviewing the quarterly reports for the Strong Futures Foundation, and I found some strange transactions." Strong Futures, the charity Daniel and I had started together for foster kids. My heart sank as I looked at the screen. "These withdrawals," I whispered. "They don't match any of our programs." "Someone's been taking money," Maya said. "A lot of money. And the authorization codes? They're Daniel's." My phone, silent until now, suddenly exploded with notifications. 20 missed calls, 50 text messages, all from Daniel. "Baby, I'm so sorry about tonight. Mom was drunk. She didn't mean it. Please answer your phone. You can't be serious about the contracts. Do you know what you've done? You're going to regret this. Answer me now." The messages got angrier as they went on. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. "Block his number," I told Maya, "and change all the security codes for the building. He has a key." Maya nodded, already typing. "What about the foundation? Call our lawyers. If he stole from those kids..." I couldn't finish the sentence. Those kids were like me. They had nothing. And he'd taken from them to, what, buy another watch? Fund another vacation? My phone rang. Not Daniel this time. It was Marcus Chen, my mentor. The man who'd given me my first real business advice, who'd believed in me when no one else would. We shared a last name by coincidence, but he'd become the closest thing to family I had. "Sarah," his voice was serious, "I just left a board meeting at Wellington Corp. You need to know something." "What is it, Marcus?" "They're planning a hostile takeover of Chen Industries. They've been planning it for months. Sarah, I think Daniel was part of the plan all along." The phone slipped from my hand. I didn't sleep that night. By 5 a.m., I was in my office, making calls. By 7 a.m., my entire leadership team was assembled in the conference room. Coffee cups and worried faces surrounded the long table. "Thank you all for coming so early," I began, standing at the head of the table. "We have a situation." James Morrison, my CFO and one of the few people who knew my whole story, cleared his throat. "Sarah, I've been up all night looking into this. It's worse than we thought." He clicked a button, and the screen behind me lit up with financial data. Names of companies I didn't recognize. Transaction dates going back 6 months. "Shell companies," James explained. "Blue Mountain Holdings, Riverside Ventures, Crown Capital. They're all fake companies buying our shares. And they all trace back to one source. The Wellingtons, I said, my voice flat. They own 12% of Chen Industries already, James continued. At this rate, they'll have enough for a hostile takeover within 3 months. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once, panic spreading like wildfire. I raised my hand for silence. When did the buying start? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. 6 months after you started dating Daniel, James said quietly. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Every sweet word, every kiss, every I love you, all of it was a lie. He was a corporate spy, sent to get close to me to learn our secrets. He has access to our 5-year plan, Lisa from Strategic Development said, her face pale. He was at the retreat in Aspen. He knows everything. Not everything, I said, thinking fast. He knows what we wanted him to know, but he doesn't know about Project Phoenix. Project Phoenix was our real expansion plan, known only to 5 people in this room. I'd kept it secret even from Daniel, some instinct holding me back. What do we do? Maya asked. We fight, I said simply. James, I need you to call Robert Kim at Kim Financial. Tell him I'm collecting on that favor from 2019. Lisa, reach out to our contacts at Morrison Group. They've been wanting to partner with us for years. Maya, get me a meeting with Alexandra Pierce today. Pierce? James looked shocked. She's Wellington's biggest competitor. Exactly. For the next 3 hours, we worked like a well-oiled machine. I called in every favor I'd earned over the years. The foster kid who'd made good had helped a lot of people climb their own ladders. Now it was time to remind them. By noon, I had commitments for a defensive fund worth twice what the Wellingtons had spent. My allies were buying shares too, but openly, legally, loyal to me. I was reviewing contracts when Maya knocked. Sarah? Daniel's here. He says he won't leave until you see him. I found him in the lobby holding a massive bouquet of roses. His suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair messy. He looked like he'd been up all night too. Sarah! He rushed toward me, but security stepped forward. Baby, please, we need to talk about last night. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. You're overreacting, he said, his voice taking on that tone I now recognized as manipulation. Mom had too much wine. She says things she doesn't mean. You know how mothers are, they're protective of their sons. Is that what you call throwing wine in my face? Being protective? You're being too sensitive, he continued. That's the problem with your background. You take things too personally. In our world, these things happen. You need thicker skin. Our world. Like I wasn't part of it. Like I was still that foster kid who didn't belong. Daniel, I said sweetly. You're right. I am sensitive. Sensitive enough to notice when someone's been stealing from foster children through our charity. His face went white. Security will escort you out now, I said, turning away. Oh, and Daniel? Tell your mother she was right about one thing. I am nobody. Nobody she should have messed with. As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed. A text from my private investigator. Found something about Mrs. Wellington. Her husband's first wife didn't die in a car accident. We need to talk. Now. I met my private investigator, Ray, in a small coffee shop downtown. He was an ex-cop with tired eyes and a reputation for finding things others couldn't. The more I dig into the Wellingtons, the worse it gets, Ray said, sliding a thick folder across the table. Mrs. Wellington's first husband died under mysterious circumstances too. And Mr. Wellington's first wife? The car accident story has holes you could drive a truck through. I opened the folder. Inside were photos, news clippings, and police reports spanning 30 years. They've left a trail of bodies, Ray continued. Not just people, businesses too. At least 6 companies they've destroyed. Same pattern each time. Get close, gain trust, then tear it all down and rebuild it under the Wellington name. I flipped through the pages, my stomach turning. There were faces here. People who had crossed paths with the Wellingtons and suffered for it. Can we find these people? I asked. Already did, Ray said. Most won't talk. Too scared. But there's one who will. He slid a photo across the table. A beautiful woman with sad eyes. Vanessa Reed, Daniel's ex-fiancée. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Vanessa Reed's living room. Her hands shook as she poured tea. I was engaged to Daniel for 8 months, she said quietly. My family owned Reed Pharmaceuticals. We weren't as big as the Wellingtons, but we had patents they wanted. What happened? I asked. Daniel happened, she said bitterly. When I found out what they were doing, I confronted him. The next day, my family's lab caught fire. All our research destroyed. My father had a stroke from the stress. We lost everything. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. They won't just come after you, Sarah. They'll target everyone you care about. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Mia, my foster sister. We'd grown up in the same group home, survived the same nightmares. Sarah, she said, her voice excited. I got your message. You know I've been wanting to write an exposé on corrupt business families for years. If what you're saying about the Wellingtons is true, this could be my big break. It's dangerous, Mia, I warned. I'm a journalist, she replied. Dangerous is my middle name. Besides, no one messes with my sister. After we hung up, I felt both comforted and concerned. Having Mia on my side was a boost. She had contacts at major newspapers. But it also meant one more person I cared about in the Wellingtons' crosshairs. I was still thinking about this when I arrived home that night. The security guard in my building looked nervous. Ms. Chen, there's been an incident. Mr. Wellington was here. When we refused him entry, he became agitated. Agitated how? He threatened the staff, said he'd have us all fired. When that didn't work, he tried to force his way in. We had to call the police. Inside my apartment, I found Eric, my head of security, waiting. We need to talk, he said grimly. We've been monitoring threats since yesterday, 3 suspicious vehicles circling the building. Someone tried to hack your personal email, and there's been a man watching your office from across the street. The Wellingtons, I sighed. They're escalating, Eric confirmed. You need better protection. I've doubled the security team, but you should consider... My phone buzzed with a video message from an unknown number. I opened it, expecting another threat from Daniel. Instead, I saw my foster mother, Eleanor. At 72, she still volunteered at the community center 3 days a week. The video showed her leaving the center, walking to her car. A black SUV slowly followed her, staying just far enough back that she wouldn't notice. The message beneath the video was simple. She lives alone. No security system. Shame if something happened to Grandma Eleanor. The video of Eleanor being followed repeated in my mind as I paced my apartment. My first instinct was fear, then rage. The Wellingtons had crossed a line. Get her here, I told Eric. Now. Full security detail. I want her in this building within the hour. While Eric made arrangements, I called Alexandra Pierce. The Pierce family had battled the Wellingtons for generations. Old money versus older money. But Alexandra had built her own reputation as a shrewd businesswoman who played by different rules. I've been waiting for your call, Alexandra said when she answered. No hello, no small talk. The Wellingtons are circling you like sharks. I need an ally, I said simply. My father refused to work with yours 20 years ago. It was the biggest mistake of his career. There was a pause. I won't make the same mistake. My office? 30 minutes. Alexandra Pierce was everything I expected. Elegant, sharp-eyed, and straight to the point. Her corner office overlooked the Wellington building, a fact she seemed to enjoy. They destroyed my cousin's marriage, she said, pouring us both scotch. Bankrupted my uncle. The Wellingtons don't just want success, they want everyone else to fail. I need to know everything, I said. She pressed a button, and her assistant brought in a locked case. Inside were files, decades of Wellington family secrets collected by 3 generations of Pierces. Tax fraud in the 80s, insider trading in the 90s, money laundering through their European branches, bribes to building inspectors, Safety violations covered up. Workers who disappeared after threatening to go public. She pushed the files toward me. Take copies. My lawyers have verified everything. By the time I returned home, Eleanor had arrived. My foster mother stood in my living room, suitcase in hand, looking both confused and determined. Would someone like to tell me what's going on? She demanded. Men in suits showed up at my door saying I needed to pack immediately. I hugged her tightly. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. The Wellingtons were having you followed. It's not safe for you to be alone. I expected her to be frightened. Instead, she snorted. Those rich snobs? I figured they were behind it. She patted my cheek. Honey, I worked in the public school system for 40 years. It takes more than some fancy family to scare me. Over dinner, I explained everything. The wine incident, the embezzlement, the takeover attempt. Eleanor listened carefully, occasionally asking sharp questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. You know what your problem is? She said finally. You're playing defense, always reacting. It's time to take control of this game. What do you suggest? First, secure what matters most. Her eyes were steely. Money can be replaced. People can't. Following her advice, I spent the next morning moving funds between accounts, setting up trusts for the Children's Foundation, and creating legal barriers around my most important assets. I was just finishing when Maya burst in, face pale. Sarah, there's a problem. Daniel's lawyers have filed a court order to freeze all your assets. They're claiming you misused joint funds. On what grounds? I demanded. He's saying you were engaged, that you made verbal agreements about shared finances, and... She hesitated. He's claiming you're mentally unstable, that your foster care background has made you paranoid and vindictive. I should have been angry, but instead I felt oddly calm. Let him try. That evening, my phone lit up with invitations to the Wellington Foundation's annual charity gala, the biggest social event of the season. Attendance was mandatory for anyone who mattered in the business world. It's a trap, Eleanor said, reading over my shoulder. Yes, I agreed, but sometimes you have to walk into the trap to spring it. I didn't know then just how right I was. 2 days later, with cameras flashing and society's elite watching, Mrs. Wellington tapped her champagne glass for attention. Her diamond bracelet caught the light as she smiled triumphantly. We have a special announcement tonight, she declared. My son Daniel and his beautiful fiancée, Sarah Chen, are officially engaged. The wedding will be the event of the year. The crowd applauded as Daniel appeared at my side, slipping his arm around my waist like a snake. His grip was tight enough to bruise. Smile, darling, he whispered in my ear. You're trapped now. The Wellington ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Every important person in the city was there, sipping champagne worth more than what most people earned in a day. I stood next to Daniel, his fingers digging into my arm as cameras flashed around us. Isn't this wonderful? Mrs. Wellington cooed to the crowd. We're so happy to welcome Sarah into our family, despite her humble beginnings. The polite laughter that followed made my skin crawl. I caught Eleanor's eye across the room. She gave me a slight nod. It was time. I'd like to say a few words, I said, stepping away from Daniel. Before anyone could stop me, I walked to the microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began, my voice steady. The Wellington Foundation does important work, which is why I was so disturbed to discover funds being misappropriated. The room went silent. Daniel started toward me, but 2 of my security team, dressed as waiters, subtly blocked his path. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in the Strong Futures Foundation, the charity Daniel and I created for foster children. I nodded to Maya, who pressed a button on her tablet. The massive screens around the ballroom, meant for a slideshow of Wellington achievements, suddenly displayed bank statements, transaction records, Daniel's signature authorizing withdrawals. $2 million, I continued. Money meant for scholarships, housing, and medical care for children with nothing. Instead, it went to private jets, gambling debts, and... I paused, looking directly at Mrs. Wellington. Paying off blackmail. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. I knew every word was being recorded, shared, spreading like wildfire. But that's just the beginning, I said. The Wellington family has built their empire on fraud, intimidation, and destruction. More documents flashed on the screens. The evidence Alexandra had provided. Tax records, lawsuit settlements with NDAs, photos of properties mysteriously burned after owners refused to sell. "You lying bitch!" Daniel's voice cut through the murmurs as he finally pushed past my security. His face was contorted with rage. "I'll destroy you for this! You think you can embarrass my family? You're nothing but trash we picked up from the gutter." His words echoed in the shocked silence. Several guests began edging toward the exits. "You've been recording?" he screamed, noticing the phones. "Give me those phones. Now!" As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened. Police officers entered, followed by my legal team. "Daniel Wellington," the lead officer said, "we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and criminal threatening." As they handcuffed him, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. An older woman had entered, elegant, steel-haired, with a face that echoed Mrs. Wellington's but carried decades more dignity. "Catherine?" the woman said, approaching Mrs. Wellington. "It's been 20 years, but I'd know you anywhere." Mrs. Wellington went pale. "Security, remove this woman immediately." "My name is Margaret Davis," the woman announced. "My sister was Patricia Wellington, Jonathan Wellington's first wife. The wife who supposedly died in a car accident the day after she changed her will." The police officer looked interested. "Ma'am, we'd like to speak with you." As chaos erupted, Mr. Wellington appeared at my side. Unlike his wife and son, he remained perfectly composed, which somehow made him more frightening. "Impressive," he said quietly. "You've caused quite a scene. But this isn't over. Your son is being arrested. Your family's crimes are exposed." "It looks pretty over to me," I replied. He smiled thinly. "I'll make you a deal, Ms. Chen. Marry Daniel. Merge our companies. Say this was all a misunderstanding. In return, we'll make you richer than you ever dreamed." "I'm already rich," I said, "and I would never marry your son." His eyes hardened. "Then I'll destroy everyone you've ever helped. Every business you've invested in, every charity you support, every foster child who depends on you. Their suffering will be on your hands." He leaned closer. "You have until tomorrow to decide." The morning after the gala, Mr. Wellington's ultimatum hung over me like a storm cloud. Marry Daniel or watch him destroy everyone I cared about. For a moment, I considered it, not because I was afraid, but because I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of looking over my shoulder. Then Eleanor walked into my office with coffee and a stern look. "I can see you thinking about it," she said, setting the cup in front of me. "Don't you dare." "He'll hurt people, Eleanor. He'll go after the businesses I've helped, the charities." "And if you give in, he'll hurt more people for longer." She cut me off. "Some fights you can't walk away from." She was right. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Wellington. "I've considered your offer," I said when he answered. "Excellent. I'll have the papers drawn up." "I decline," I interrupted. "I will never marry your son. I will never merge my company with yours. And by this time tomorrow, there won't be a Wellington Corp left to merge with." I hung up before he could respond and pressed the intercom. "Maya, execute Project Phoenix. All phases, now." Project Phoenix had started as a contingency plan. Now it was war. Within an hour, my legal team had filed formal complaints with the SEC, complete with all the evidence Alexandra and I had compiled. My PR team released a carefully crafted statement to every major news outlet simultaneously. By noon, Wellington Corp's stock had dropped 30%. By 3 o'clock, it was down 60% and still falling. My phone rang constantly. Business associates, other CEOs, politicians who'd taken Wellington money, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. All rushing to distance themselves. "Senator Mitchell has canceled his appearance at the Wellington fundraiser," Maya reported. "The Thompsons have pulled their daughter out of the Wellington Academy. The museum board has voted to remove Mrs. Wellington as chairperson." It was happening faster than I'd expected. The Wellington name, once a symbol of power, was becoming toxic. Decades of fear and intimidation had left them with allies of convenience, not loyalty. When the tide turned, no one stood with them. "Sarah!" Maya called from the doorway, her face tense. Security just reported something strange. Daniel's car was spotted circling the building, then it disappeared from their monitors. I was about to respond when the emergency stairwell door burst open. Daniel stood there, wild-eyed, clothes rumpled, a gun in his shaking hand. "You ruined everything," he hissed, stepping toward me. "Everything." Before he could move closer, Eric and 2 security guards tackled him from behind. The guns skidded across the floor. Daniel screamed curses as they pinned him down. "Call the police," I told Maya, my voice calmer than I felt. "Add attempted kidnapping to his charges." As they dragged Daniel away, his threats echoed down the hallway. "This isn't over. You think you've won. You have no idea what's coming." Hours later, as afternoon faded into evening, I watched the news in my office. Mrs. Wellington's face filled the screen as reporters surrounded her outside their mansion. "Mrs. Wellington, did you kill your husband's first wife? Is it true you blackmailed board members? Where did the charity money really go?" Her perfect facade cracked. Right there, on live television, she screamed at the reporters, shoving cameras away. Her carefully constructed image of elegance shattered. By midnight, it was over. Wellington Corp announced an emergency board meeting. Trading of their stock was suspended. Their major clients publicly severed ties. 3 generations of wealth and power dismantled in a single day. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. I'd won, but at what cost? How many lives had been damaged in the Wellingtons' decades-long rampage? The next morning, needing closure, I visited Daniel's apartment with security. The police had already searched it, but I wanted to see for myself where he'd lived, who he really was behind the mask. The place was mostly empty. Evidence removed, personal items packed. But on his desk, I found a single note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Target acquired. Chen was never the only one. Operation continues. I stared at the cryptic message, a chill running down my spine. This wasn't over. It was bigger than the Wellingtons. 6 months after the Wellington empire crumbled, I stood in my new office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city I once thought would never accept me. The Wellington building, now renamed Chen Tower, stood directly across from mine. Poetic justice. The past months had been a whirlwind. After refusing Mr. Wellington's ultimatum, I'd gone public with everything. The SEC investigation had been swift and devastating. Wellington Corp's stock had collapsed overnight. Their board members fled like rats from a sinking ship. But what we discovered in the rubble was bigger than just one corrupt family. "The files are ready for review," Maya said, entering with a tablet. "We've identified 14 more families operating the same way as the Wellingtons." I scrolled through the names. Old money families who targeted self-made entrepreneurs, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. They preyed on people like me. People they thought wouldn't fight back because we didn't belong in their world. How wrong they'd been. "Have the lawyers contact everyone on this list," I told Maya. "Offer them our help." My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. She was speaking at a fundraiser for our expanded Strong Futures Foundation. The foundation now provided not just support for foster children, but legal help for business owners facing predatory tactics. "You know," Eleanor said when I called her back, "I always knew you were hiding your success from Daniel." "What? How?" She laughed. "Sarah, I raised you. You think I didn't notice when you started buying designer clothes but cutting off the labels? Or when you accidentally paid off my mortgage? I just figured you had your reasons." Her words warmed something in me that had been cold for too long. The Wellington family had faced justice in different ways. Mrs. Wellington was arrested at her bankruptcy hearing when evidence of her involvement in her husband's first wife's death became impossible to ignore. Mr. Wellington avoided prison, but lost everything, including his reputation. And Daniel, Daniel pled guilty to multiple charges, turning on his parents in exchange for a reduced sentence. I'd visited him once in prison, not for closure, but to tell him about the foundation we'd created to help businesses recover from predatory attacks. "You were never special," he'd said bitterly, "just the latest target." "I know," I'd replied, "but I was the last." The acquisition of Wellington Corp's assets had been the business deal of the decade. I'd purchased their most valuable holdings for pennies on the dollar. The move had doubled Chen Industries' size overnight and positioned us as market leaders. That evening, I attended a charity gala, not the Wellingtons, but one hosted by the Foster Care Alliance. I wore a red dress, a deliberate choice after the wine incident that had started it all. "Ms. Chen?" A voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find a man I didn't recognize. "I'm Dr. James Harper. I run the medical program for foster youth that your foundation funds." Unlike the society events I'd attended with Daniel, our conversation felt genuine. No agenda, no manipulation, just two people passionate about helping others. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked as the evening ended. "To discuss the program, of course." I smiled. "I'd like that." Later that night, I returned to my office to sign the final papers making the merger official. Maya knocked gently on the door. "The numbers just came in," she said, her face breaking into a grin. "With the Wellington acquisitions and the new international contracts, we're now officially the largest company in the sector." I walked to the window looking out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, the Wellingtons were living with the consequences of their actions. But I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. "You know what the best revenge is, Maya?" "What?" "Success," I said quietly. "But not just success for ourselves. Success that lifts others up, too." The scared foster kid who'd once had nothing had become the woman who had everything. Not because I'd destroyed the Wellingtons, but because I'd refused to become like them.